The legislature is back in session. Senator Ada, or Vice Speaker Ada, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again to the panel for being here this afternoon. I know it's been a long day, and we're just about there with the completion of the second round. You know, Mr. Chair, I've heard all afternoon, all morning, and yesterday about the, the differences between the two budgets. About $7 million between the executive budget and what OFB has prepared. And I think they're very, very close. And I don't think that anyone in this body would like to, see anything go to the wayside. And we all work hard to do what we can to ensure that it's not just a budget, but a balanced budget. And when this government was flush with cash, and we talk about shortfalls, we talk about prior year obligations, we talk about vendor payments. Those could have been done in the past couple of terms, that we had this type of money to pay out these vendor payments, to pay out the shortfalls, the prior year obligations. There should have been no reason why they should have had any prior year obligations from last term or any before that, since we were so flush with cash. But that's not the route we took, or the previous legislatures took. Which is unfortunate, because now we're here today, and now they're saying now the sky's falling, these things are not going to get done. We have vendor payments, the hospitals falling apart. But I think in the end, what we need to do is just come together and work for the betterment of our island and our people. $7 million is not a big spread in a $1.3 billion budget. We're all not going to agree to the end, but at least we can try to work together and find out how we can make it work for everyone. We talked about the BPT, and I'd like to go back to Ms. Lozama from DRT. We hashed out the BPT endlessly, but I just wanted to get a better understanding of what is it that government has in uncollected taxes. How much are we looking at?
Okay. All right, sir. So when you ask that question, there are several different areas, if you will. One of which is the accounts receivables, right? One of which is, and that's typically stuff that are, how do you say, aged, if you will. And then there are those that, for example, you filed your BPT this month, you need to pay it next month, and so forth. If you're talking, and I believe you might be talking about the accounts receivables.
Yes.
Those that are aging and so forth. I know that Carolyn had given a figure from the 23 figure, and that was about 138 million in BPT. Please remember, though, that the reason why we kind of caution against holding to that figure is, there may be things that perhaps have reached statute of limitations, perhaps maybe, and remember that this is a figure that is constantly changing. There is, people file, people owe, and so forth. So it doesn't just stay static. It's a constantly moving target. There could be overpayments, there could be underpayments, and so forth. And that's why I mentioned that with regard to the collection staff, while compared to some of the other branches, we are more adequately staffed, ideally, if we had more revenue officers there, then we can concentrate, on that particular part of the receivables. So to answer your question, the latest figure that we had was something with regard to BPT is about 138 million.
So 138 million uncollectible taxes or uncollected taxes. And, you know, I believe in the first Trump tax cuts that when they were looking for funds, I believe we did a tax amnesty program back then.
Correct.
And and I think the revenues collected from that tax amnesty was perhaps about 40 million, if I'm correct.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are we looking at doing perhaps maybe another tax amnesty program to where we can get a lot of these uncollected revenues into our coffers, and that perhaps will bring another $40-50 million back in.
Well, with regard, I do know, and I wasn't at the agency then, but I do know in talking to the staff that were there and are still there, while it did bring in the influx of collectibles, it wasn't without a lot of issues as well. So I don't know how the actual process could be improved upon, if you will, but there were some administrative challenges. So that is something that you may want to, we can certainly discuss, at a separate time.
No, absolutely, because I think any time that we have an opportunity to collect on the revenues, right now we have zero of uncollected revenues, and if this amnesty program is afforded to the general public, that perhaps we'll be able to collect, like I said, another $40-50 million. And it's perhaps better than having a balance of 138 million.
Yeah. And so, sir, just to also, remind you, I did say earlier that we do have a collection team working overtime as we speak. And if I'm not mistaken, there is a round of annual notices that need to be sent out so that people are reminded of their, tax liabilities.
Especially in this time, right, where we see a lot of businesses closing, and we're not sure what are they closing because they have an outstanding tax liability that they can't afford to pay, or what their circumstances are there, right? But I think we give the opportunity to and just the regular taxpayers as well. Mm-hmm. If we can give them the opportunity to pay their taxes, then, because I believe that the tax amnesty will remove the interest and penalty. Am I correct? Or they still are liable for the tax that they owe, but it's just the interest and penalty?
Yes, for the local BPT, correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. So perhaps maybe something that we can look at, and perhaps working and getting a program into place to collect this outstanding revenue. We can work together and see how we can make that happen.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Chair, that's the only question I have for DRT. The other one was for Gita, but Ms. Garcia is under the weather, so I'll ask her on a different time.
Excuse Masi,
Thank you, Mr.
Speaker.
Chair.
Senator Shelley Calvo, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have a day, everyone, once again. Thank you for being here, and buenas to all my colleagues. As we continue our budget deliberations, I do want to take a moment to center this discussion on the structural integrity and practical viability of our budget. I know that it's not just about balancing numbers. There are other things that we have to consider. We need to ensure that our agencies across the board have the tools, the flexibility, and support they need to deliver, most especially the essential services to our people. So we've received requests from oversight agencies like the Department of Youth Affairs, Department of Chamorro Affairs. They're seeking authority to use lapse funds. Lapse funds from FY2025 Some of them, like DCA, is for capital improvements, and DYA is to hire retirees for youth corrections. These requests actually mirror provisions already granted to other law enforcement agencies. These are not isolated appeals. They reflect broader patterns of recruitment challenges, operational constraints, and service gaps that must be addressed if we are to govern responsibly. So the budget appropriates over $1.35 billion across all branches of the government. But the real test here, not just to balance the numbers, but also not just the size of the budget, but also to consider the soundness of its assumptions, the equity of its allocations, and the clarity of its contingency planning. On that note, I wanted to start, I don't really have a lot of questions. I did prepare a couple of questions for Gida, but obviously we'll wait until Ms. Tina gets better. And majority of the questions have already been fired away. Majority of the concerns, notions from my colleagues have been put out there. For DOA, Mr. Burns, I just wanted to ask on utilization of lapse funds. Agencies like I mentioned earlier, DCA, needed their lapse funds to roll over for capital improvements. It's not really a lot. And DYA is also requesting authority to use their FY2025 lapse fund to maintain continuity in youth rehabilitation corrections programs. These programs often span fiscal years and rely on multi-year planning. So without this flexibility, services may be disrupted despite available cash balances. This is especially concerning for agencies with small budget and high fixed costs. My question is, can you please let me know what is the DOA's position in allowing agencies such as DYA and DCA to utilize lapse FY2025 funds in FY2026 for operational continuity?
Thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to speak on this matter. Generally, I'm not in favor of lapse funds because several reasons. The first reason is, why would they lapse in the first place? There was probably nothing stopping them spending money or committing to those projects in the current year. I know we're getting to the end of the current year, but I would want to be persuaded that there was a good reason for the funds to be lapsed in the first place. Secondly, it doesn't generate any cash, so the cash has to be available in the year of expenditure, which is not the year of appropriation. Thirdly, I tried to clarify to my fellow cabinet members in what circumstances they should look at these lapse funds. And I indicated to them that if they have a project already encumbered, there's no need to do that because the funds are already encumbered in the current year. If there's a specific project that, for whatever reason, and I know sometimes, you just don't know exactly what you need to encumber because that particular product or service may not be available at the time you're trying to encumber it, but that would seem to be an exception. But we could certainly look at individual projects. But I honestly believe that to be not too many. In the past years, this problem has grown out of proportion, and we ended up by having to expend funds on lapse funds that were almost bigger than the agency's budget in the first place.
I see. So we have to look into the projects for reconsideration. For instance, Department of Chamorro Affairs, their lapse funds will have to be used for HVAC, for capital, for maintenance. The reason being they could not put in their invoice at the moment is because the mechanism or the unit, the piece, will have to come from off-island. It will take months before it gets here. So things like that, would you say are special considerations?
That certainly would be, but if it's on order, it's already encumbered, and they don't have to do
So
anything.
your recommendation is, let's do it now, let's order it now,
Yes.
and put the invoice now.
Well,
So
it
it's
doesn't
safe
matter
to...
when the, sorry, excuse me for interrupting, but it doesn't matter when the invoice comes. On the budgetary basis, if it's ordered, it's encumbered.
It's already
and the
in.
funds have been used.
So it's safe to say that DOA will not or will probably have exclusion to support a statutory amendment to formalize this authority for agencies. It has to be a case-to-case basis.
Yes, we would certainly much prefer that.
Thank you, sir.
May I?
My next,
May I
sir.
comment?
Sure.
Yes, so I agree with Mr. Byrne, but on the other side, there have been instances where we've gone back 3 fiscal years to identify lapses, and the lapses were able to be utilized, and it didn't upset the apple cart in the current budget year. DCA, for example, I'm asking my staff to check, but I thought we already took care of a big compressor replacement project. We also were recently asked to fund the return of some Bishop Museum artifacts from Hawaii to here. So we were able to assist them by looking at their existing budget, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about a $30,000 third quarter request that wasn't planned, as Mr. Byrne talked about. You know, sometimes things like this happen. So there are cases when it's very useful to have it, but in trying to understand the work involved to ascertain what the lapses were, without recent audits, for example, to verify what it is you're couching as being potentially available from prior year lapses. It takes my department a lot of time and effort to make sure that what we're comfortable with doing is, checked, double checked, triple checked, so we don't, for all intents and purposes, mess up. But in certain cases, it is a tool, but I agree with Mr. Byrne. The continued use of it puts undue pressure on the current year appropriations, because you're paying those past from the lapses. As he said, there's no cash. So you have the lapse authority, but you're basically using it in this current fiscal year. So it's an exercise that does have utility, but should be limited.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about procurement bottlenecks. Because numerous agencies cite delays in procurement as a barrier in execution of appropriate funds. What reforms or staffing enhancements in DOA implementing to streamline procurement timelines in FY2026?
Well, we've already started, Senator, in 2025, increasing the staffing to match the expected demand. And we're trying to recruit a supervisor that will take a lot of pressure off the acting Chief Procurement Officer. Bottlenecks, though, are not just caused by GSA. Not almost all, but a very large proportion of delays, when I ask what is the reason for a delay, is a lack of clarity in the requisitioning department, or a requisitioning department trying to buy something that doesn't exist. That then involves an iterative process of, I guess, emails, or actually under the new system, it just goes automatically back and forth between GSA and the department. We look at it very closely in order to try and remove these bottlenecks, even though we asked departments to submit their requisitions for this financial year back a few months ago. We've been inundated with requests in order to do what I've just suggested and encumber the funds for fiscal 25, and we're doing our best to deal with those.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lesser.
We have tried our level-headed best to remind people year in and year out, your budget is something you should really understand, embrace, and utilize to its fullest capability. If your budget request, say for example, you asked for the ability to buy a couple vehicles and it was included in your budget, you better start getting the acquisition process like after the dust settles, after we load the budget in October, start in November. Start putting the scope and the quotes together for whatever vehicles that you want and submit it to GSA so they can assist you in being able to get through that purchase. GSA had some IDIQs for certain types of vehicles that made certain vehicle acquisitions a little bit easier. GSA also had IDIQs for computers, which made acquisitions of desktop computers easier. You're not going to get an Apple. I think it was Lenovo is what the IDIQ was. You're not going to get anything but what it is that was covered under the IDIQ. But it is incumbent on the agency director and their admin staff to put in those requisitions that are outside the normal course of work, like, timesheets every 2 weeks and stuff like that. But you need not to wait until GSA is closing down to be able to take care of the requisitions in the queue before the end of the fiscal year and, avoid inundating them unnecessarily. So we've been trying, as Mr. Burns said, and we're making some progress. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be waiting to try to get whatever it is that you asked for until later in the fiscal year. It doesn't help anybody.
Moral of the story, don't wait until the end. Plan ahead of time, agencies. That way we're all efficient here. Continuing with BBMR, sir. I just wanted to address agencies that are serving vulnerable populations. It's not all emotions here, but somebody has to do it, right? So agencies like DSID, DYA, and CAHA receive flat or modest increases, while larger agencies saw substantial boosts. I was just going to ask, sir, would BBMR support a reallocation framework that prioritizes agencies with direct service mandates to youth, seniors, and persons with disabilities? Would you support such mandate or reallocation framework?
We certainly would, Senator, and if I could elaborate a little further. Like Mr. Guerrero at OFB, when we look at agency budgets to present to the legislature in the form of the executive budget request, we look at historical needs, whether or not their mandates are being met with the funding that they have, how the directors are utilizing and addressing their mandates, and whether or not the funding is sufficient, and also what it is that you're expending. So previously, whatever the executive budget request was, when agencies came down before the legislature to have a budget hearing, they were told, you stick to the EBR level. You stay with what it is that was contained. That was like the man law. Well, we did away with that, and we give the agencies carte blanche to ask you guys when they come down for whatever it is that they need outside of what was provided in the executive budget request. We have given them the latitude to do that and to make the case to you guys and to OFB so that, whatever it is that is required by one of these agencies that you're speaking about, that maybe we're not necessarily in tune with, but maybe you guys having an ear closer to the ground and the ability to assist, maybe you can help in being able to get that cushion that they're asking for. We have tried to use disabled workers. As a matter of fact, there's a statute that requires us to do that. I'll be honest with you, we're not seeing a lot of people that have disabilities but would be otherwise great employees coming in and, for all intents and purposes, using...
Or we have a lot of youth.
Again, once they're 18 and get their high school degree and are able to then work for the government of Guam, we could certainly utilize that talent pool. So I have no objections. We've just been unable to address that set aside for disabled employees. But we welcome it, ma'am.
So, another question, sir. Agencies such as DSID, DYA, Guam Behavioral, and Public Health, they all serve overlapping populations, because we're talking about populations now. Youth, persons with disabilities, even if you mentioned that it's not a big number, but families, manamkus, they're all big numbers. And obviously families in crisis right now here in Guam. You're talking about a big, huge number. So when we look at these agencies, this is actually an interesting concept. When we look at agencies, their budgets are developed in silos. When I think about that, I feel like there's a risk in duplication and fragmented service delivery. So I think in the long run, a much coordinated approach could improve outcomes and reduce insufficiencies. So my question is, how does BBMR coordinate budget planning across agencies with intersecting missions to avoid duplication and ensure resource efficiency?
We thoroughly encourage agency directors with similar cross-sectional mandates to get together, share resources, and collaborate in solutions that benefit both of their agency mandates. We've done things where we had a group home in Talafofo that was under one agency. We transferred it to another agency because it was more beneficial. We've taken assets similarly to be able to enhance the program delivery of agencies. We are very in tune to the needs of the folks over at DSID and Behavioral Health. We're very attuned to the residential treatment fund requirements. That's how come I noted it in the letter that we sent to you, because we do have the off-island care facilities that are quite expensive, but then we're having an increase in facility capabilities on island, and we need to be very cognizant about what it is that the on-island needs are, because for years we only focused on the folks that we didn't have care facilities for that required it, and thus they had to go off-island. If we can take care of people that require these special services on island, it's so much better. But we need to be able to understand that growing ability to accommodate and budget accordingly. we're dealing with one group in particular that is actually expanding their ability to provide these kind of services. And they're at the younger age that you're talking about.
On Guam.
Yes, so we need to be very careful about what it is that, somebody down the street is taking time and effort to be able to assist us with these facilities. We need to be able to make sure that we identify and place people as appropriate in these facilities. That's what they're there for. So we need the funding for the ladder treatment.
Thank you, sir. Now, my next question is,
Residential treatment, sorry.
you know, since we're talking about budget cuts and everything, but we also have to be mindful about things, right? So balancing. Most of my colleagues have been talking about balancing. That's a fly.
He was over here earlier.
He was over there. Well, he made his way down here. So just an interesting notion, you know, to carve out waste, duplication, excess. I was just thinking, would BBMR support a pilot initiative to consolidate certain services or service delivery budgets under a shared outcomes framework?
We certainly would, and if you were to provide some authorization in the budget with a modest, appropriation to allow for that to happen, I will personally ensure that I will make sure that the appropriate agencies get together, and we'll see whether or not we can come up with something and present to the body that makes sense. I welcome that, ma'am.
Yeah. I'm all for finding creative solutions to cut, not just slash or defund or zero out agencies. I'm willing to look into every single angle to ensure that, you know, transition is properly met and, you know, nothing falls off in its place. So, So with regards to budgeting for recruitment gaps, sir, I'd like to dabble into that a little bit. Multiple agencies, including DYA, DOC, and GPD, face persistent recruitment shortfalls. Yet their personal budget or personnel budgets are often built on full staffing assumptions. This leads to underspending in some areas and overextension in another area. So a more dynamic budgeting approach could improve responsiveness. How does BBMR account for chronic vacancies when building agency personnel budgets, and what adjustments are made mid-year?
So let me give you a couple of very recent examples. The fire department, the ability for this body to continually appropriate money for new fire cycles has really helped to build a younger, more vibrant, resilient, and professional fire department. The fire department people don't leave the fire department. They like the fire department. Unlike the police department, where we have, again, the legislative assistance in being able to fund recruitment cycles, and you get people that go through the cycle, but during the cycle, you'll see a higher rate of dropouts in the police cycle than other cycles. And then once they get into the force, and maybe after they answer their first few domestic violence cases and come to a few bad accidents, they realize, well, maybe this is really not for me. And they tend to migrate to other police departments, airport police, port police, things where maybe you don't have to pull your gun out so often, to be quite honest with you, but you're also thinking about your family. And I don't begrudge anybody that makes that kind of decision, because being a police officer is very tough. So the situation with the police department, we've got, we're not having that same traction in retention through the recruitment cycles that we are with the fire department. That's kind of like your model right now. But we're also, another agency that's doing pretty good is Customs. People tend to stay there too. But you're going to have people migrating back and forth regardless, because they're in the public safety area, and they might be, doing something with somebody else in another department, and, oh, your department looks better than mine, and, so they do that. But we certainly are seeing the fruits of the policy of the legislature in providing for both adequate staffing patterns as well as the ability to fund cycles to then bring new people in. And I think you can see that just by the demographics of the different peace officers. We didn't used to have very many Park Patrol officers. Now we do. So we're starting to build up a cadre within all the areas. It takes time, and some of the adjustments in pay have been, a reason for people to look at this career. And I would, let the legislature know that you're a part of what that incentive in being able to adjust the salaries to make them more attractive. You're part of the solution, and we thank you for that. So mid-year adjustments, okay, here's another example. Mid-year adjustment for Senator Gubatauta, because he likes to ask about the E911 thing. So we were looking at where the fire department was, and they were able to take that contract for the E911, which, we were trying for months to be able to find funding for it. Thankfully, the vendor stuck in there while we were, trying to figure that out. And we were able to make payments from their budget. And we think that the budget that's in OFB's substitute bill would be sufficient should it require that to be the case again. Because what we did to get this first 4 years with this company is we used a fund balance for the E911. We didn't use actual appropriations. So we took a little bit of money from the fund balance for this fiscal year and then some money from the fire department's budget. So we do make mid-year adjustments as necessary, especially for a critical need like the E911.
So, sir, flexibility is the key.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Definitely. So my last question for you, sir. Would BBMR support a contingency reserve for agencies with high vacancy rates to fund temporary or emergency staffing?
We would if you, so right now, do you continue to have, Steve, the retirees coming back? Okay. So we've been building up the ability to continue to have retired employees come back and serve. Police department, revenue tax, teachers, there's a fairly long list, and it's been added to by the legislature as necessary. So we have that, but I would welcome that idea to have another set of recruits, so to say, to be able to tap. If you're looking at a retired person, I'm sure they have the institutional knowledge, and you don't have to tell them, where the bathroom is and where your desk is. But at the same time, you're not getting somebody that is going to be making a career out of, the use of that money. They're just coming in to help you through a tough spot. I would welcome any outside-the-box thinking to be able to augment our workforce with, as Mr. Byrne had mentioned earlier, the idea of a civil servant having a career.
Senator, if I could add to that, the idea certainly of having a more mobile workforce in order to address temporary staff shortages, is a good idea. What we would have to do is to make sure that the jobs are equivalent in each of the receiving agencies. And agencies tend to want to particularize their jobs, which would mitigate against that. But with that in mind, we'll take a look at making sure that jobs are more transferable.
Good point.
Thank you, sir. So basically, we just have to continue move forward and find creative solutions that will really take us to progress and not harm. And on that note, Mr. Chair, that's all the question I have. I have a number of questions for Gita, but I'll save it for later. And thank you so much to the panel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator Calvo. Senator Taitigui, you recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm your last one, so I'll try and make this as quick as possible. So thank you so much for sticking this out. Mr. Byrne, yes, last night, very tiring and going back and forth on this rainy day and some other issues on the excess revenue for FY23. So, Mr. Byrne, this CRER and FY23 appropriations, were they all paid off? All those appropriations made in FY23 to use excess revenue 23, were all of them paid? And what would I asked for a list of those that were not.
Well, unfortunately, that's going to take a little while, but they were probably paid, but not paid in 23. Some of them drifted into 24.
Okay. And we did have a negative 308,000 at the end of the CRER report. Is that
in
correct?
Appropriations, right?
In appropriations.
But not in expenditures.
Okay, right. So it basically, we overspent what was in excess in FY23, correct?
We over-appropriated.
Right, over-appropriated. Okay. Mr. Carlson, can you give me a rough estimate of the July, if you happen to have it, the July CRER report on the major special funds, like tourist attraction funds, shortfalls, and the excess revenue? Can we kind of get usually during budget, you kind of give us a little sneak peek, even though it's not ready yet.
I would love to, Senator Taitigui. It's the, 13th of August. Normally, maybe around 3 more days, we get the raw data from DOA, and then we're able to generate the report, but we haven't got the raw data yet. I'll try to get you something if we are dismissed after you, then I will certainly go back to my office and see whether or not I can get you something, a little cheat sheet, no problem.
Thank you so much. And that being said, Steve, I also asked earlier if you can give me some numbers on doing a recalculation using the FY25, 24, and 23 on the your cap on the rainy day fund.
Yes, Senator.
Can you stop the clock? You give me 3 more seconds because I stopped and it kept going.
Okay, doing the recalculation, if we're going to use FY23, 24, and 25, the total amount would come up to about 91, comes out to about $90.4 million.
Steve, I had an opportunity to talk, shortly with Tina, she was falling sick last night. But I was able to ask her the question, but I'll let Lester answer that. Lester, a lot of people were asking about questions for Gita, and I believe that if you can answer some of them for us. First, what is Gita's interpretation of using what revenues to determine the rainy day fund on the last 3 revenues to determine the cap?
Mr. Byrne and I are of the opinion that using 25, 24, and 23 is the appropriate way to do that. And I think I gave you a copy, or at least you took a picture of that analysis. We did our own analysis using the OFB approach, 22, 23, 24. I'm not sure if our numbers are the same, but we took a stab at going back using appropriations, including supplemental appropriations to that year's budget to come up with an average so we would, it would be apples to apples. It wouldn't just be the budget as passed, but as amended, as we've been doing.
And he just recalculated his, it's 91 million on the cap. Using 25, 24, 23, Steve redid the calculation. Based on his numbers,
okay.
It would be 91 on the cap.
Okay, so if he's telling you his cap now is 91, right? Mr. Byrne is on record as saying at the end of this fiscal year, the amount in the rainy day fund will be 77 million. So it's kind of one of those things, Senator, where no matter which way you look at it, the bottom line is we have not reached the cap yet.
Has Gita come back to you on using which analysis?
No.
Okay. I'd like to get that too, because I believe she said that based when they go out to bond market and stuff, they would use the latter like explained earlier. Okay, also I spoke with legal, and legal believes it should start 25 because it was already appropriated. We're already starting, you know, it's almost been a year over, so to use that. So we're looking at 91 million, 0.41. So Steve, based on the 77 million that BBMR is talking about, how much more do we need to reach that cap? From 91, if we were at 77?
Utilizing what is in the rainy day fund, if you include the FY25 level,
77.
the difference between the 73 million and the 91.8 million will be 17.5 million.
Okay.
But just remember, Senator, when we did the calculation, the numbers that he's using basically are audited numbers that are reflected in the audit. The numbers we're using is based on what is projected revenues for the year. They're
So
two different numbers.
Okay, so Steve, using your numbers and using the FY25, 24, 23 to project your cap on the rainy day fund, you said it's 91.4 million, correct?
90.4.
Oh, my bad, 90.4, okay, which is still short of what's in the rainy day fund, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Byrne, how much funding did you put in the last 3 years into the rainy day fund?
In the years ending fiscal 24, we put in 56 million.
23.
No, a total of
Okay.
56 million.
Okay, I'd like you to break that down to 3 years. So how much each 3 years? Do you have a list you want to pass out?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, can we have a short recess so we can get that list?
But I can also give you the numbers in the meantime, right? So
Okay.
fiscal 23 was 29.6 million in total. Fiscal 24, it went up to 55.9 million. Currently, we've got 58.1 million, and we're going to, as Mr. Carlson just said, end up the year with 77 million.
In FY23, how much did you deposit into the rainy day fund?
30 million, or 29.6 million.
24 was 55?
There was a total of 55, so
Not total, how much was deposited in?
well, it'll be 56 less 30, so that's 26.
So 26, okay? Into the rainy day fund in FY24, and then 25?
And 25, it's another 3 million, which we're going to make perfect by the time we get to the end of the year.
And
to
if
get
we-
to
and if we-
77 million.
Okay, and that's in the account. That's in the rainy day account, you know,
Yep.
sealed, signed, sealed, delivered, locked, okay?
It's in
And
the
that
account.
total is 70.
Will be 77 million.
Okay.
Is 58 million.
So, Mr. Chair, it's obvious that we did not reach the cap of the rainy day fund, and it's something I think this body needs to address. Mr. Carlson, can you tell us the bond rating? What is that good bond rating, and where are we today in the bond rating for Guam?
Okay.
Like AA, A, AAA?
So I have a problem with rating agencies and changing criteria. When we first issued, for example, the BPT bonds, they were rated AA and A. Then the rating agencies took a look at the fact that Puerto Rico declared bankruptcy. They thought territories could not do that. So because Puerto Rico did that, they downgraded Puerto Rico, Guam, CNMI, the Virgin Islands. So we all suffered because of Puerto Rico's lack of fiscal responsibility. We recently got upgraded to the first notch of investment grade for our general obligation bonds last year by Moody's. I think it was February. It was 20 years since we've been back in the investment grade category. So we got there, again, collectively. You guys, the body, the administration has worked very well together to understand what it is we need to do on Guam and also how our actions are received by people who rate our bonds. So it would be nice to be in the A category or the BBB plus category. We're BBB minus, so...
So we're in the negative on BBB.
No, it's not negative. Negative is just basically a ranking. So you got BBB negative, BBB positive, then A.
So it's the lower B.
We're the low range of investment grade. So we'd like to be able to aspire over the next few years, because it takes a while, to get back up into a BBB solid rating and a positive outlook. Right now we're BBB minus with a stable outlook. So we want to change the outlook to positive, and we want another step up the ladder.
Okay, thank you so much. So my colleagues understand the importance of, being financially responsible on this island affects how much interest that we would have to pay if we went out to the bond market. Not just that, but the fact anybody wants to even buy any of the bonds from us because of, our ratings or our history of what's happening. So they credit are you familiar, on Gita's side, they worked with a hospital to provide an assessment, and this company came in to provide assistance on where they could see change or improvements to the hospital. Are you familiar with that?
I would rather Gita speak to you about that, ma'am.
Okay, there were some suggestions on new software updates and things like that right away, and of course a 6 to 12 month period of between 6 months and 12 months of changes. Now, refinancing the 2015-10 bond, can you explain earlier why we would not see anything until 2027?
Basically what I said was, what we did, we're not going to close until later this month. So it is, we're not done, and so we can't provide you with the details because we haven't closed yet. And I think Mrs. Garcia also said something to you and Senator Terlahi about her concern with rolling back the BPT, because these are BPT bonds. So the other thing I think she cautioned you, and this is why I don't want to say anything other than this. I don't want to spook investors who might otherwise have an opportunity to pull back on what it is that we are currently undertaking. So I'd rather not speak any more about it for fear of creating waves unnecessarily.
Well, we would lose $8 million if we lose this opportunity.
If we did something rash and irresponsible and we dismantled everything that we've tried to put together, yes, you're right. So I would really like to stop talking about that, ma'am.
Okay. Earlier, Lester, or yesterday, there was a comment, by the chair that that $33 million on self-insurance funding and piles of cash sitting in a room. It was a comment. $33 million on self-insurance funding and piles of cash sitting in a room. Is there any truth to that comment?
I believe we had authorization to enter into a self-insurance plan. We didn't do it unilaterally. So Mr. Byrne and I are too old to get afoul of the law. Neither one of us has that desire. So every time we come before you, we're going to give you honest answers. And if we don't have the answers, we'll get back to you. But we did not do anything that is not sanctioned by this body.
So are you sitting on a pile of cash in a room?
No, we're not sitting on anything. I'm sitting on a chair.
I think it would be a nice idea if there were piles of cash, but there aren't.
Okay, I just wanted to see if there was anything to that. Would BBMR or ORFB support a sunset clause, basically a revenue trigger, a rollback pause if collections fall below a certain amount to protect the services on this island? And what is that critical amount? I know there's a reorganization if we fall below revenue, but what if we had a sunset clause, and what would that be? Or a trigger, revenue trigger?
Are you talking about other than the 3% below adopted levels per quarter that triggers a fiscal realignment plan? Something other than that?
Yeah, pretty much like that, but because with the BPT rollback, right? And if we find that the numbers are not coming in, like the withholdings, the income tax that was, questionable, and the Trump tax cuts there, well, not, the refund tax, what would that number be?
Right now, it's a function of what it is that the legislature passes and then are tracking at a quarter, not a month, but a quarter. If it's cumulatively, and you kind of saw that in 2018, the January numbers, the February numbers, the March numbers were all like leaning negative. And so it was a foregone conclusion that we were going to hit a tracking of less than 3%. So that triggered the fiscal realignment plan. I think, that mechanism served its purpose because it had to be sustained revenues that didn't meet collection levels for 3 straight months. So the writing was kind of like on the wall. It wasn't like, you could see it coming. So I think it's adequate.
Would you support a type of sunset or, from the rollback in the event?
We'd have to talk about that.
Okay.
I would like to discuss it, but I'm not really like seeing what you're talking about right now.
Okay. What about OFB? To support?
I share the same sentiments, Mr. Carlson, because aside from the alignment of government finances, if we go below 3% in the first quarter of any fiscal year, that automatically is the trigger for us to make some sort of adjustment with the government revenues. As far as sunsets, right now at this point it would be difficult for me to say either way, simply because I am of the opinion that we hope we don't go backwards, and that the economy will continue carrying this government forward for whatever revenues we appropriate. Through the appropriation, I think, is where we can actually make some concessions and make the fine decision to say enough is enough. This is the level the government needs to operate, and let it be. If you start putting sunset provision for everything that we do, then it's already a negative connotation even before we start. So I just hope that whatever we appropriate is going to be a level that this government can achieve and sustain going forward.
Steve, you mentioned that DOC had been receiving some money in the last 3 years. Can you tell me what legislation or what appropriation was given to DOC in the last 3 years to give them $15 million?
If you're referring to the modernization plan, Senator, yes. If you look at the initial law that created the modernization plan, it also appropriated $5 million, and that was supposed to be the start-up construction of the new prison.
But that came from EITC money, and then we couldn't use it.
But it's still an appropriation. It was appropriated. Whether or not it was actually collected out of the EITC, that's a different story.
But we couldn't. Even their other funding that was appropriated by the EITC during that time could not be done because it was a lockbox and they were not going to reimburse anything. That was supposed to go to, that EITC money from the federal government was going to a lockbox, only specific for those reimbursements.
Senator, you asked me about the $15 million I quoted you. That is part of the $15 million. What happened after the appropriation is beyond me. You asked me about the $15 million. I told you how I came up with the $15 million. So the initial law that created the money.
Years.
No, the initial appropriation for the modernization plan appropriated $5 million. I believe in FY23, 24. I believe in FY23-24, another $5 million was incorporated into the Budget Act, which set aside another $5 million. In this fiscal year, there is an appropriation of $5 million for that plan. That's the 15 million I was referring to. Whether or not the 15 million materialized in terms of expenditures, or whether or not the project ever got off the ground, that's not that. Like I said, that is beyond me.
Can you elaborate on what you know about that, the funding for the DOC? Lester?
Sure, ma'am. I mentioned this to Mr. Guerrero yesterday. So we did not load the $5 million, the initial one, because it was from an EITC reimbursement. Our records only indicate the second appropriation was this year, and that was something we did load. So DOC had $5 million this year. The balance is down to $4 million because you allowed them to use it for operations. So I think the intent of the legislature would have been 10, but what actually we were comfortable with loading was 5 this year, and DOC's been availing of it, so the balance right now is 4.
So you believe that that $5 million that was appropriated in 23 on EITC money is actually money that did not exist?
No, it's not. It did not exist. I think some of the statements that you made were pretty accurate. We didn't feel that it was an appropriate measure to then ultimately load. Similarly, for the new hospital, we didn't put $35 million in the bank. So there isn't a balance of $35 million, from that authorization.
How much do we need for Simon Sanchez?
We're asking the body to put in the pre-construction amount that's authorized in Public Law 3722 of $16.3 million.
Additional, right?
Yes, on top of the authorization that we have, that we would take to the bond market, yes.
Okay. Stephen, in Healthy Futures Fund FY25, it was projected $23,483,837. It's expected to be short by $2.5 million. In FY26, in your estimated projection revenues, it's $23,844,603 proposed, which is about $476,000 more compared to FY25. This has been trailing lower, but yet you increased the projected revenues in FY25.
Senator, the current tracking for the Healthy Future Fund right now to the end of the year is 1.5 million. So going forward into the next fiscal year, because of the tracking we've experienced, we believe that, like every other account, 1 year is good, next year is bad. 1 year is good, the next year is bad. So we see this fluctuation. So if you take the average over the last 3 years, and at least the growth, the potential growth in each account, we feel that it's still a negative, but it's not going to be as bad as we can anticipate next fiscal year. And that's all part of budgeting.
But then why did you increase it? It has been negative for the last umpteen years, going negative every time we've appropriated, but in FY26, you've increased it by 470,000,
like
76.
Mr. Carlson has graciously explained this whole last 2 days that he feels the economy is growing. He feels it's great out there. He's being blinded by the sun. So those are good indications for me that I'm saying, okay, I'm going to use some of his analogies, some of his optimism to say that the economy will at least hold its own going forward. And increasing a $23 million fund by 400,000 is kind of like very minute.
Well, I don't know, especially because at the end of every fiscal year, we have to cover those shortfalls in special fund. Going above for the last umpteen years, it's been negative. It's amazing how you can.
Senator, let me just correct. When you're saying the last fiscal years we've been tracking negative.
For the Healthy Futures Fund, we're talking about the Healthy Futures Fund.
You're correct. The last couple of years we've been tracking 24 million.
Yeah, 23,400.
We're only projecting 500,000 more for fiscal year 26.
But do you realize that 500,000 more is going to have to come from somewhere?
Yes,
to
pay
for it because you've overprojected. Instead of living within our means of this staying within the same FY25 budget, is what you're saying, but what you've done is add to it. So that means you're giving out more, and then we're not going to have the money to pay for it. Okay, and anyways, next question. The correction
could I
revolving fund.
respond to that before you go
ahead.
on? Senator, you have to remember that when we do these projections, these are estimates. These are based on historical data, they're based on trend, they're based on economic conditions as we move forward. All indications for the Healthy Future Fund for the last couple of years is showing positive growth. This year, it's a reduction. But we can't just discount this year simply because it went down. All the other funds that we've been treating, the TAF is a great example. The TAF for the last couple of years.
I'm going to be talking to you about the TAF, if you don't mind.
That's the same example.
So answer me this question, Steve. Are we in the negative on special funds as the CRER report in June? What is that amount?
There are certain accounts that are amount.
How much are we short in June?
10.3 as of June.
$10.3 million short in special funds. And we're going to have to find a way to cover that at the end of the fiscal year, correct?
Normally, and historically, any shortfall in the special fund is covered by the general fund.
Exactly.
And it's always been like that.
Yeah, so where are we going to get it? That's my concern. Corrections revolving fund is lower. Where does it revenue generate from this correction fund? And why is it lower?
The correction fund you're talking about?
The correction revolving fund.
Give me a second, I'll check.
Okay, thank you.
What the fund consists of, Senator, includes the DOC revolving fund and the use of money and property from DOC.
Right, what's it tracking?
It's tracking. No, this is not tracking, this is year to date.
And if it's short or more, and then what is it in FY26, your projections?
Currently, Senator, we appropriated 1.1. What is tracking is 989,000. And we have 3 more months to go.
And how much did we appropriate in FY26 under this fund?
926,000, or 36.
I'm sorry?
936,000. So this particular account, we saw the trend, and we said it's not going to be as prosperous as next year, so we lowered it down, simply because the trend says this is one of those accounts that we need to take into consideration, that it's not going to be as, it's not going to generate as much revenues as other special accounts will, or anticipate to.
In the, on page 10, Q, Guam Highway Fund, what is under line 17 or 18, register volume 7966282? What is that? And it's negative 1.4 million.
I believe that amount, Senator, is the federal match that goes to the airport.
Lester?
This is a continuation, Senator, of our commitment to be able to take the 4 cents in the aviation fuel tax increase and remit it to the airport. So Mr. Guerrero is correct.
Right, and we're expected to pay the same amount for the next 3 years?
No, this is just the current year.
And to be current year, but if we were to fund the full amount that we owe, how much is it total?
$9.2 million.
9.2.
Yes, ma'am.
Taft, let's talk about the Tourist Attraction Fund. What are we looking at here? As far as FY25 versus 26?
For the record, ma'am, I don't want to get sideways with Mr. Guerrero, but the executive budget request for the Tourist Attraction Fund was $33,641,472, which mirrors the S bill. So we agree on the TAF for next year. And it's reduced from FY2025, where it's down $2.3 million. And
in FY25, I believe we were $6.4 million short, correct?
Yes, it's short, and when we actually, with the Taiwan flight and some of the momentum that GVB is gaining, we think that this $33 million is attainable.
So it's looking good then, right?
It's starting to look good, ma'am.
Right,
Yeah.
so then why do we need that $10 million into GVB?
Oh, that's to continue the marketing efforts and the airline.
10 million to GVB for incentives to give, discount tickets for people to come to Guam?
It seems to be working.
Well, what's not working is our bad roads on the island and our hospital and our schools the way it is. You know, I'm a Republican. I believe it's about a hand up, not a handout. But I also believe that if we're going to support our businesses, we need to support them with good roads, safety, public safety put in place, a hospital to be put in place so that they can do business on Guam. And if we don't take care of the people's needs on our island, how can we think anybody's going to survive, whether you're a business or not a business? Our families. So our infrastructure is falling apart here. Taking $10 million to give free tickets out to people to come to Guam, well, you got to ask yourself, if they can't afford to come out to Guam, what do we think is going to generate revenue for this island? A lot of them are what they call cup of noodle, soup people coming out here not having the funding.
Thank you, Senator. Your time is up. And we will have GVB come down. We will have them in the Committee of the Whole to answer the incentive program. I believe Senator Guåhan has invited them. Just a couple of comments. I think a pile of cash, any business that had $33 million that they can just put aside for one of their programs, that's a pile of cash. I think $850 million to $1.3 billion in appropriation in 6 years, that's a pile of cash. We are in recess.